A brown-haired man goes to his campus, only to discover that everyone is missing. The entire campus is deserted. Classrooms are empty, though students' bags are still there, as if class had been in session just moments ago. Even in the cafeteria, meals are still on the tables, like students had been eating just minutes before. But now, not a single person is in sight. The brown-haired man searches the campus, hoping to find someone, but there isn't a single person besides himself in the whole school. After investigating for a while, he finds no clue as to where all the students and teachers have gone. Exhausted, he finally decides to head home. However, no matter how long he waits, the bus never arrives, so he's left with no choice but to walk. As he walks home, he notices that the streets are completely empty. Not a single person can be seen. This makes him wonder if he's dreaming, so he decides to go home and sleep, hoping to wake up from whatever this is. When he reaches his apartment, he opens the door and calls out, saying he's home, but no one responds. Wondering where his mother is, he searches the house, but she's nowhere to be found. While looking around, he notices the clock still shows 2:45. He finds this very strange and starts to feel uneasy because he's certain it was 2:45 when he left school, yet the time hasn't changed. Assuming the clock has stopped working, he checks his phone, only to find that it also shows the exact same time. Confused and alarmed, he wonders what's going on. After all, it should take at least 2 hours to walk from school to home. On top of that, the sun hasn't moved either. It's as if time on Earth has completely stopped, except for him. Just as that thought crosses his mind, a voice suddenly confirms that he's right. Startled, he turns to see an angel with golden hair standing before him. She informs him that time on Earth has indeed stopped, and he is the only exception. Shocked, he asks who she is. The angel smiles and replies that she is exactly what she appears to be. Still stunned, he hesitantly asks if she's a home intruder. Offended, the angel shouts that she is not, then points to her wings and white dress, demanding he look at her and recognize who she is. Still clueless, the man asks if she's cosplaying. Frustrated, she yells that she's not, and formally introduces herself as God's emissary, an angel named Lita. He remains silent as Lita continues, explaining that she came to tell him he's been left behind. His eyes widen in disbelief, and his mind goes blank as he realizes the truth. He mutters that it all began during his elementary school field trip, where he was forgotten and left behind. Then it happened again during a middle school retreat, and once more during a math field trip in high school. He was even left behind during university membership training, where students stay on campus for club activities. Recalling all these moments, he begins to cry, saying, "I've been left behind again." Lita smiles gently and informs him that all humans have been transported to another dimension, except him. Still crying, he asks why he was the only one left. Putting on glasses and adopting an air of arrogance, Lita explains that Earth is about to undergo a great cataclysm. But before she gets into that, she says she needs to first explain what the cataclysm actually is. She tells him that the great cataclysm means Earth is leveling up because it has reached its maximum experience points. For high-ranking individuals, this means mana will begin to flow across Earth. Additionally, the Akashic record will make contact with the planet, and humans will gain a sense of this record, something they call a status. Even he understands this simplified explanation, as it sounds just like a game. Lita laughs, pleased with herself, and says she's pretty good at explaining. She goes on to say that once mana is released, monsters will appear, and they won't be easy to kill with ordinary guns or swords. While she continues explaining, the man watches her silently, still suspecting that she might be in costume. Lita, unfazed, continues. She says that if humanity is left in its current state, they'll be at serious risk of being wiped out by the monsters. That is why God stopped time on Earth and sent all humans to another world, so they could have time to train and adapt to mana. Lita assures him that all of the humans' real bodies are being kept in a safe place, and by creating avatars, they were transported to another world. This explains how mankind is now learning to use mana in an alternate realm. With this training, they will at least have the bare minimum strength to fight against the monsters. After hearing the explanation, he raises his hand to ask a question, pointing out that monsters can't be killed with guns or even large explosions. Lita responds that monsters formed from high-ranking energy That answer helps him understand the urgency behind strengthening humanity. Lita confirms his thoughts, saying that God is very merciful for giving mankind this opportunity to learn mana. Hearing that, the brown-haired man asks about himself, his eyes reddening with frustration. Lita grows nervous and admits that she believes there was a mistake. His expression tightens in anger, and he demands that she fix it immediately. Lita lets out a nervous laugh and explains that the dimensional portal has already closed, so correcting the mistake would be very difficult now. She then compliments his stealth, saying his skill is so remarkable that even God failed to notice him. This only enrages him further. His face turns red as he shouts, questioning how a god that clueless could even exist. Overwhelmed, he collapses to the ground, crying and flailing dramatically, begging Lita to send him to the other world so he too can learn mana. Lita tries to comfort him, saying that God feels pity for him since he was left behind, and has decided to give him a bonus. But he protests, shouting that he doesn't want any bonus. He just wants to learn mana like everyone else. Lita gently replies that learning mana will be difficult until the Great Cataclysm occurs. She reveals that it will be 10 years before mankind returns to Earth, and until then, she'll take care of his meals while he waits. Upon hearing that, he begins to wonder what he's supposed to do for 10 whole years in a frozen world with no humans. In response to Ilan's dilemma, Lita calmly suggests that he begin training his body to prepare for the upcoming cataclysm. Her voice is steady, presenting it as the logical next step in his situation. Ilan replies weakly, saying it feels pointless, because even when the cataclysm does happen, he still won't be able to use mana like the others. So why bother training when the result feels the same? Lita smiles sweetly and tells him that this just means he has to become physically strong. Ilan wasn't expecting that answer, and his heart sinks. Once again, he shouts to be sent to the other world, but Lita calmly declines, saying it's not possible. He breaks down crying again. And so, his lonely life on Earth begins. All the places near his house are empty. Even the shrine has no one in sight. Deserted place with no humans anywhere. Time continues to pass, and 5 years have gone by since the disappearance of humanity from Earth. During that time, he has been working out consistently at the gym to strengthen his body. The skinny teenager from before has become a man with impressive muscles. While others are developing their mana and awakening powers to resist monsters, all he could do was build his physical strength. One day, during a weightlifting session, Lita asks if he isn't bored. He ignores her, so she asks again, how can he do the exact same thing every single day for 5 years? He replies simply that he's doing it because he has no other choice. Lita agrees, saying it's necessary to make up for his lack of mana learning. He nods, affirming that this is exactly why he's doing it. Afterward, Lita observes Ilan's body, noticing how much his muscles have developed. Not only has his physique changed, but his strength and patience have also grown remarkably. Lita knows that most people would struggle to focus so intensely on one thing for so long, so she can't help but compliment Ilan, telling him he's not an ordinary person. She adds that she knew he was special from the beginning, considering he managed to avoid God's gaze with his stealth skill. Instead of feeling pleased, Ilan becomes angry and shouts, asking if she means to say that it's his own fault he was left behind. Lita only smiles at his reaction, but Ilan knows that she is the only person he can talk to on Earth. She visits him once a week. Not only that, but Lita also prepares all his meals. His dining table is automatically filled with food at mealtimes. After tasting her cooking, Ilan realizes that Lita's food is far better than even his mother's. The most convenient part is that the dishes disappear on their own once the meal is finished. One day, while Ilan is sitting at his computer with Lita watching him, he decides to learn martial arts and how to use weapons since he's already built a strong foundation with fitness training. Lita questions how he plans to learn when there's no one left to teach him. He replies that he'll teach himself using the internet. Even though time on Earth has stopped, both electricity and internet still work, so he decides to study old videos uploaded in the past. While browsing, Ilan asks why the internet servers are still running. Lita gives the same answer as always, calmly stating that it's because time has stopped. But this time, her vague explanation pushes him over the edge. He feels she's constantly hiding behind that excuse, avoiding his questions no matter how serious or desperate they are. The weight of being left behind, with no answers and no direction, becomes unbearable. But eventually, he realizes that getting angry won't change anything. So he focuses his energy on training, deciding to learn martial arts with quiet determination. He begins practicing every single day without rest, pushing his body and mind to their limits. Each day mirrors the last, repeating stances, punches, and footwork endlessly. His only goal is improvement. Lita watches in silence most of the time, occasionally offering advice, but mostly allowing him to grow through effort and pain. One afternoon, as Ilan continues his routine, Lita approaches with a curious look in her eyes. She asks if he would like to spar with her, suggesting that having a real opponent might help him improve faster than solo training ever could. Ilan looks at her with a mix of surprise and disbelief, asking if she seriously expects him to fight his own sister Nuna. But Lita nods without hesitation, telling him not to worry and to simply do his best. Letting out a long sigh, Ilan clearly shows reluctance, emotionally conflicted. But in the end, he says that if she insists, then yes, he will hit her, even if she's an angel. Because holding back now would mean denying everything he's endured until this point. With years of bottled-up emotion, he charges forward, unleashing a punch filled with the strength of 9 years of loneliness, pain, and resentment. Lita moves with effortless speed and grace, landing her own punch cleanly on Ilan and sending him flying through the air. The reason is simple. Lita is a star of potential, born for combat. Lita asks if Ilan understands now and tells him not to worry, encouraging him to continue using her as a sparring partner. Ilan, badly hurt, responds that he doesn't want to do it anymore and wants the chance to refuse. But Lita decides to continue, and so, the promised 10 years eventually pass. Lita tells Ilan that, with his current level of martial arts, he would have no problem defeating low-level monsters. She adds that if he continues to level up, he will eventually be able to use mana too. She's confident about this because she herself considered his potential. Ilan corrects her, saying it's more accurate to say she pushed him into it. Lita smiles politely and tells Ilan he has done well over the past 10 years. She reminds him that when the Great Cataclysm begins, many things will change. They shake hands, and Lita asks if they will meet again. Ilan replies that it depends on him. He puts on a 3-piece suit and starts walking down the street, knowing the Great Cataclysm is about to begin and that people will soon return. Ilan feels nervous. It's been so long since he last saw another human. He thinks it's a shame to say goodbye to Lita, but he's looking forward to returning to his normal life. Ilan closes his eyes to wait for the Great Cataclysm. But time passes, and nothing happens. Lita also wonders why nothing is happening. Confused, Ilan demands an explanation. He asks why no one has appeared. Lita hesitates, then informs him that there seems to have been some kind of mistake. This infuriates Ilan. He shouts that he hates her even more now. Once again, he throws himself to the ground, crying and dancing in frustration. He asks if he needs to wait another 10 years because the axis of time has shifted. Sobbing, he says he'll do it. If that's what it takes, he'll wait until the very end. However, 10 years pass, then 20, then 50. Still, the people do not return. Ilan continues practicing martial arts, becoming far stronger than ever before. Lita compliments his talent, watching as he pushes himself year after year. But after 50 years, Ilan stops keeping track of time. One day, as he stares at the ground, Lita asks what's wrong. Ilan quietly admits that he no longer remembers his mother's face. Lita is silent for a moment before apologizing. Ilan drops his training stick and asks how far off the axis of time has drifted. He then confesses that he's grown bored of martial arts and begins walking away. Alarmed, Lita follows him, urging him to remember how important martial arts are. The Great Cataclysm could begin at any moment. Lita fears that Ilan has finally fallen into despair. But Ilan calmly replies that he already understands the importance of martial arts. He assures her that he will continue training, but now, he also wants to read books. Lita is relieved. Realizing Ilan hasn't given up, she tells him it's a good idea. From that day forward, Ilan reads books all day long. He starts with modern novels, then moves on to business books. Eventually, he explores topics like general knowledge, history, geography, physics, chemistry, and art. Time passes, and he reads every book in the library. After mastering all knowledge available in his native language, Ilan decides to learn other languages. He begins traveling the world, starting with China, then visiting Russia, America, and many other countries. He learns the languages of several nations and reads every book he can find across the globe. He visits all the continents, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, losing track of time completely. One day, after finishing every book in a library, Ilan wonders what to do next. Hearing this, Lita asks if he ever gets tired. He replies that he has no time to be tired. There are still too many things he wants to do before the great cataclysm arrives. Lita understands Ilan's resolve. Even after spending several hundred years alone, he still believes the people will return, and everything he does is preparation for that day. Moved by his unbreakable spirit, Lita feels deep pity. She prays to God, begging him to return the people to Earth before Ilan reaches his limit, before he finally becomes tired and gives up on life. One day, Ilan is hunting in the forest and successfully takes down a wild boar using a spear while Lita watches him. After having read every book in the world, Ilan begins learning butchering and blacksmithing. To study butchering, he brings the boar to a safe place and takes out his tools. He wants to keep things simple and starts learning the basics of butchering with the wild boar. During the process, Ilan wonders aloud and asks Lita if killing all the animals on Earth might prevent monsters from appearing. Hearing that, Lita advises him to only hunt the animals she approves of. She warns that if he kills all the animals, the natural equilibrium will be destroyed. She almost reveals something about the monsters, but abruptly stops herself. This makes Ilan curious, and he questions her, asking if she's trying to bait him into something. Lita tells him to just pretend he didn't hear anything. Lita silently complains that Ilan is such an unusual person. She's amazed that he continues to find new things to do without ever falling into despair. It has been 274 years since Ilan was left behind, and even for an angel like Lita, that's an incredibly long time. It's already astonishing that a human, who typically doesn't live beyond a century, has spent this entire time preparing for the future. While she reflects on that, Ilan finishes butchering the boar surprisingly well despite it being his first time, which impresses Lita once again, though only in her thoughts. It has now been 300 years since Ilan was left behind, and he has completely mastered the art of butchery. However, mastering blacksmithing takes him far longer. One day, while attempting to craft a weapon, he mutters that making one is completely different from just reading about it in books. His hand slips many times, and the weapons he makes end up with zero durability. Frustrated, he begins to think his hands are useless and calls himself incompetent. There are countless times when the swords he forges break before completion. In the end, it takes him around 5 years to produce a shabby-looking sword. Still unsatisfied with the result, he shows it to Lita. She takes it from him, inspects it, and comments that it's not even good enough to slice a radish. Ilan becomes furious and tells her not to bother slicing anything. Just give the sword back. But Lita decides to keep it as a commemorative item. Ilan is stunned by her response. Lita then reminds him to thank God, as he hasn't disappeared even after the world has gone through resets. After saying that, she takes off flying, prompting Ilan to yell in frustration, demanding to know why she always tries to annoy him. Despite his irritation, Lita smiles as she looks at the sword Ilan made, clearly pleased. Starting with daggers, Ilan goes on to forge every type of weapon imaginable: longswords, spears, axes, hammers, and more. And so, 50 more years quietly pass. One day, while making a weapon, Ilan still finds himself dissatisfied with his blacksmithing, admitting that he still has a long way to go. So he prepares meticulously, perfecting the process until he's finally content. After all, time is the one thing he has in abundance. Then, after striking the hammer for 100 years, he finally completes a flawless spear. A true masterpiece, born from centuries of persistence. Lita is awestruck by the result. She praises Ilan's incredible skill, saying it's the best steel weapon she has ever seen. However, she reminds him that once mana is introduced to the world, new and far stronger materials will emerge, materials superior to steel. At that time, he will need to forge new weapons again. Even so, Lita feels happy watching Ilan and deeply admires his patience and perseverance. After mastering both butchery and blacksmithing, Ilan turns his attention back to martial arts, dedicating himself to training once more. He no longer bothers to count the years as they pass. Watching Ilan practice martial arts again makes Lita realize that he continues to progress without ever showing signs of exhaustion, experiencing several generations' worth of growth within a single body. But it has already been 1,000 years since he was left behind. Lita believes that, as a human, Ilan will eventually reach his limit, and she wonders what he will do when that time comes. She thinks it would be nice if Ilan could experience something new and begins to blush as she imagines what he has yet to go through. She suspects the only thing Ilan hasn't experienced is a romantic relationship, which makes her blush even more. Frustrated, she tries to dismiss her thoughts, reminding herself that she's already an angel and shouldn't think of such improper things. But then she remembers her mission to support Ilan. Since it's part of God's orders, she convinces herself that it has nothing to do with her own desires. She tries to believe it's the right decision. If Ilan needs to experience that part of life, she will do what she can to help. While Lita struggles with her inner thoughts, Ilan notices and asks what she's doing. Hearing that, Lita approaches him and asks what's wrong, still unsure how to bring up the topic. Unintentionally, she leans in closer to Ilan's face, prompting him to call her name. For a moment, Lita wonders if Ilan has already figured out her feelings. But instead, Ilan points out that her sword has been moving on its own for a while. Lita quickly checks her sword and shouts in surprise, asking why it's acting that way. The sword slips out of its sheath and begins flying into the sky. Seeing that, Lita chases after it in a panic. It's the first sword Ilan ever made, and she can't afford to lose it. Ilan watches her running after the sword and calls her name, but suddenly, his clothes revert to what he was wearing when time on Earth first stopped. Everything around him begins to reset. Ilan quickly realizes that the world is returning to the exact moment when time initially froze. Meanwhile, Lita finally catches the sword and prays to God, begging not to have it taken away. After holding it tightly, she looks down at Earth, wondering when the great cataclysm will finally arrive. Ilan's body also begins to rise into the air. Seeing this, Lita calls out to him and tells him to wait, but he has no control over what's happening. In her thoughts, Lita pleads with God, saying it's too much. She hasn't even had the chance to say goodbye. But as she clutches the sword, she reassures herself that at least she still has something Ilan made. She takes back her earlier complaint, deciding that maybe God isn't so cruel after all. Hugging the sword, she whispers that she's truly grown fond of Ilan over the past 1,000 years. A sad expression crosses her face as she wonders when she'll get to see him again, because in the end, they didn't even get to share a kiss. Meanwhile, Ilan is also watching Lita as he floats away, wondering if this is really how they're going to part, without even a proper farewell, and so suddenly. Then he remembers Lita once telling him that she is an angel. He begins to wonder, if he becomes a high-ranking being someday, would that allow him to meet her again? Everyone returns to the exact positions they were in when the world was reset. Humans reappear on the streets, campuses, and grounds of colleges. Ilan opens his eyes and finds himself lying on the college grounds, surrounded by other students. As soon as he regains consciousness, a status panel appears in front of him. It displays his name and title, Panka's Mystic Loner, which translates to passive stealth. His stats show Strength 72, Dexterity 81, Health point 78, but mana is at just 1. The status window also explains that Ilan's active skill, Stealth, has reached its maximum level and is now eligible for evolution, though it requires special materials to do so. His passive skill level, however, cannot be estimated. The panel further mentions a bonus Ilan received from God for having fallen behind. Every time he levels up, all of his status attributes will increase by 5 points. Seeing the status window, Ilan immediately realizes it's the day of the Great Cataclysm. He looks around and sees other students opening their own status windows, all of them shocked by how real it feels and how quickly everything came back after what felt like just 10 years. Overhearing their conversations, Ilan quietly notes to himself that while it has only been 10 years for everyone else, he alone was left behind for 1,000 years. Meanwhile, all the returnees' stats have been reset, bringing them back to their original levels. As people chat and reunite, Ilan notices something strange. Despite being surrounded by people, no one acknowledges him, as if they can't even see him. Ilan glances at his stealth skill and wonders if that's the reason. He tries to deactivate it, but it doesn't work. No matter how hard he tries, he can't turn it off. Growing anxious, he wonders if he's truly destined to be alone for the rest of his life. After several failed attempts to get anyone to notice him, Ilan gives up. He decides to just go home. While walking through the streets, he smiles faintly. After all this time, it's comforting to finally see people again. For the first time in 1,000 years, the sun begins to set, and Ilan reaches his home, shouting joyfully that he's finally back. Ilan's mother hears his voice and calls his name. Hearing her voice, Ilan instantly remembers her face, which he hadn't thought about in so long. Overwhelmed, he starts sobbing and throws his arms around her, shouting that he missed her so much. All of his memories come flooding back, and he fully realizes that the woman standing before him is his mother, the same mother he hasn't seen in 1,000 years. The sunset he now sees for the first time in centuries, the smell of dinner cooking, the sizzling sound from the frying pan, and his father quietly reading a newspaper at the dining table. Everything is finally back to the way it used to be. While they dine together, Ilan's father casually remarks that there's no news in the paper about the incident in a place called Haija. Ilan's mother walks in carrying a bowl and asks if he was in Haija. She then adds that she had been in a place called Yaman with the other neighborhood women. Ilan is stunned. Not everything is as it used to be. He wonders, what exactly are Haija and Yaman? As the conversation continues, Ilan's father comments that Haija was a perfect place, though it had no rice. Ilan's mother laughs and says she never figured out how to use mana properly. It was too hard to control. Ilan finds himself unable to participate in their conversation. Then, his mother turns to him and asks where he had been during the past 10 years. Ilan is shocked. He was the only one left behind on Earth, and he spent all that time with Lita. But he decides to hide the truth, thinking they would worry too much if they knew. So, he lies and says it was a nameless place. His father nods and agrees with his mother, saying the mana training was too difficult. She then questions whether it made any sense to bring newborn babies, elderly people, into such harsh conditions for 10 years. She believes it would have been better if they had just sent the young and strong. Ilan responds, explaining that if they had done that, it would have disrupted the balance of the world, so they had no choice, even if it wasn't the most efficient method. As soon as he says it, he realizes he may have spoken too much. Both his parents stare at him in surprise and ask what he's talking about. Ilan quickly tries to calm the situation, saying it's just what he thinks, while silently warning himself to be more careful with his words if he wants to avoid suspicion. His mother smiles and changes the subject, asking Ilan what life was like in the other world. She mentions that she heard people can earn a lot of money if they're good at using mana, and that monster remains are said to be extremely valuable. Ilan's father continued, saying that since people who can utilize mana well are rare, they'll definitely be able to earn good money. Hearing that, Ilan feels strange. It's surreal to hear his parents talk like gamers discussing a fantasy game. Ilan then puts down his chopsticks and calls for his mother and father to get their attention. With an anxious expression, he tells them he has something important to say. He finally reveals that he can't use mana. Both parents are shocked at first, but Ilan's mother smiles and tells him to focus on his studies instead. His father sighs sadly and says he already suspected this would happen, explaining that it must be genetic. Since he couldn't use mana properly, it made sense that his son wouldn't be able to either. Ilan is surprised they believed it so easily, but it doesn't really matter to him. He's simply happy that peace has returned to his world. Later that night, Ilan returns to his room and is surprised to see the last spear he made still there. He wonders why it hasn't disappeared, since he assumed everything would have been erased when the world was reset. Curious, Ilan picks up the weapon and thinks back to how hard Lita tried to prevent the first sword he made from vanishing. He wonders if her efforts are the reason this spear survived as well. He swings the spear, satisfied that he won't need to craft a new weapon. He can use this one to fight monsters. A status window appears, detailing the spear's properties. It has a unique grade, an attack power of 800, and a durability of 500. Another line describes it as a miracle, a weapon crafted entirely by a human, using only steel, without any mana. Reading this, Ilan wonders if those are impressive stats. Seeing the 800 attack power, he isn't sure if that's a lot or not. He sits down in his chair and decides to start collecting more information online. As he scrolls, he feels excited. It's refreshing to see new content after having read every book in existence. People who have just returned from the other worlds have started uploading their knowledge to the internet. Ilan first looks up how leveling works, hoping to understand what kind of strength is required to fight monsters. He finds out that an average person can handle monsters up to level 5. To be chosen as even the lowest-ranked soldier in other worlds, one usually needs to be around level 7. At level 10, people start gaining basic classes like swordsman, archer, and so on. Reaching level 50 makes someone strong enough to advance to a second class. A third-class advancement becomes possible at level 100, at which point one is considered a valuable national asset. However, the conditions for leveling up after that become so brutal that there are no known reports of anyone reaching the 4th class. Many speculate that beings like dragons or behemoth might fall into the 4th or even 5th class. After gathering all this information, Ilan leans back in his chair and decides he'll ask more questions when he goes to school the next day. He wonders how long it has been since he last attended school and thinks aloud that, to him, his normal life hasn't changed nearly as much as the world itself has. Then, he quietly admits that he misses Lita. Suddenly, a voice responds, saying that Lita would be glad to hear that. Ilan jolts in shock, hearing a voice in his room despite being alone. He immediately starts looking around, asking who's there. From the window, someone speaks, introducing herself as a messenger dispatched by the heavens to help Ilan adapt to mana. Ilan turns around, shouting that there's an intruder, only to stop in shock at what he sees. A small blue-haired girl is calmly saying that she isn't an intruder. She introduces herself as Eartha, an angel, just like Lita. Ilan is speechless. Once again, someone unexpected has appeared in his life. And this time, it's a second angel. Eartha continues, telling Ilan that mana is extremely difficult to control, which is why God turned her into an avatar and sent her to another world for 10 years to train in mana. Hearing this, Ilan becomes sad and remarks that God didn't do the same for him. Eartha hears his comment and explains that this is exactly why God sent her now, because one particular angel passionately requested help for the failed human, Ilan. She reveals that it was said to be unfair to leave Ilan behind when all he did was train without any support, so Lita asked for another angel to assist him in learning mana quickly. Ilan feels pleased, understanding that Lita really did try her best for him. Still, he asks Eartha why she didn't come earlier. Eartha replies that the higher-ups were concerned that an angel and a human might grow too close. That's why she was chosen instead of Lita. Ilan feels disappointed. He wanted to see Lita again. Then Eartha stands up and says something feels different from what Lita reported. Ilan asks what's different. Suddenly, Eartha's eyes turn blue as she scans Ilan's stats. She remarks that with his current physical abilities, he doesn't need an angel's help. He could easily defeat a low-ranked monster with just his fists. She then recalls how Lita had begged her, saying that Ilan needed support because he had been alone for 1,000 years. Lita had cried, insisting that he was the only person who couldn't use mana and that it was unfair to leave him like that. However, all of Lita's polite begging breaks apart in Eartha's mind when she realizes Lita deceived them, something no angel should do. Even so, Eartha has no choice now. She's already been assigned the mission. She then observes that Ilan has clearly undergone intense physical training and informs him that she will now support him, so he can learn to use mana more easily. Ilan doesn't understand and asks how she's going to do that. In response, Eartha stands on Ilan's head and says that simply by being near him, she will activate the dormant mana within him. Because she is a higher being, her presence will amplify his cognition, control, and application speed by 10 times. She explains that back when mana didn't exist, it wouldn't have mattered. Even if Ilan had stayed with Lita for 1,000 years, he still couldn't have learned to use it. But now, with the mana-rich environment created by the Great Cataclysm, a single year should be enough, according to her calculations. After hearing all this, Ilan asks if Eartha is really going to stay on his head the entire time. Eartha tells him not to worry. She's under a spell that prevents lower beings from seeing her. But Ilan yells that visibility isn't the problem. He's more concerned about things like showering, using the bathroom, and having privacy. He imagines all the embarrassing moments that might occur with Eartha watching him. But even that's not the real problem. The real problem is that he won't be able to watch about 1.7 terabytes of treasure. Eartha casually tells Ilan that she doesn't care what he does. He's a lower being, so he doesn't need to worry about her. Ilan gets anxious, wondering if she can read his mind. Eartha calmly replies that he's just being delusional. Ilan's patience snaps, and he yells that he misses Lita. Eartha bluntly tells him to give up, because he has to stay with her for the next year. And just like that, his life with a tiny invader begins. It's his first time going to school in 1,000 years, and he believes his daily life is finally back to normal, or so he thinks. As he walks to school, Eartha is riding on his head. Ilan is clearly not happy. He asks her if she's really going to stay perched up there like that. Eartha gives the same response. Other beings can't see me, so don't worry about it. Ilan snaps, saying that he can see her, and that's exactly why he minds. He also tells her to stop swinging her legs back and forth. Eartha scoffs, and Ilan is shocked, asking if an angel just scoffed. She insists that he's mistaken. While they're bickering, a group of soldiers marches by. Ilan realizes that life hasn't fully returned to normal, and probably never will. The government is clearly preparing for the monsters that may appear in the future. Ilan wonders how effective the military will be, remembering how Lita told him that high-ranking monsters can't be defeated with conventional weapons. They require mana. The scene shifts to the school, where students are gathered and chatting. Meanwhile, Ilan is left alone once again, realizing that he's still invisible. He tries once more to deactivate his stealth skill, but it still won't turn off, no matter what he does. Eartha sees this and tells him that it's not a bad skill. Ilan doubts her. He thinks stealth is a loser skill. Eartha clarifies, she never said it was a good skill. She only said it wasn't bad. Then Ilan overhears other students talking about creating new skills. Curious, he asks Eartha what they're talking about. Eartha explains that the students are combining small amounts of mana with their battle experience to create techniques they can use in combat. Ilan is shocked by Eartha's blunt words. She continues, saying that even if she, as a higher being, were to combine all the skills of the students chatting nearby, it would still be inferior to Ilan's stealth. That's what she meant when she said it wasn't a bad skill. However, stealth isn't the kind of ability Ilan wanted, so he still sees it as a loser-only skill. He glances around at the other students, watching them talk freely. Thanks to his stealth, it's incredibly easy to eavesdrop on conversations. No one notices him, even when he looks directly at them. Although this isn't how he wanted to use the skill, he realizes it's a good opportunity to gather information. While listening in, he hears a group of students talking about an empress who was famous in Lamparth for the past 10 years. Apparently, she also came from Ilan's university, but no one knows her identity. The students assume they'll learn more about her once monsters start appearing. Ilan guesses that the empress is probably a student who displayed extraordinary abilities in the other world and earned that nickname. All the students are eagerly waiting for dungeons to appear, though even if they do, no one can enter yet due to level restrictions. Curious, Ilan asks Eartha about dungeons and what those level restrictions mean. Eartha explains that dungeons are actually traps created by God. Ilan doesn't quite understand, so she elaborates. God sets up bait, usually food, inside a dungeon to lure monsters. Once enough monsters have gathered, he seals the exit so they can't escape. But unlike monsters, humans can freely enter and exit these dungeons, as long as they meet the required level. In other words, God created safe hunting grounds for humans, and that's what a dungeon is. Ilan then asks why they don't just keep the monsters locked inside the dungeon forever. Eartha explains that dungeons are temporary. They disappear after a certain period. That's why humans have to clear them before time runs out. She adds that some monsters are too intelligent to be trapped in the first place. These are powerful creatures that can break the traps or even create their own dungeons and disguise them. That's why humans should never let their guard down. Ilan now understands that hunting monsters won't be easy. Just then, their teacher walks into the classroom and tells everyone to take their seats. He begins calling roll, one name at a time. After finishing the attendance, the professor launches into a long off-topic lecture about the changes occurring on Earth and how society must now adapt. He informs the students that the UN is already discussing the regulation of mana usage and imposing restrictions on leveling up. China and several other countries are focusing on how monsters and the spread of mana will affect the global environment. Depending on how Korea responds, countless industries could collapse while others might rise. But to Ilan, it all feels meaningless. Anyone could talk about this. He came to university to learn things he didn't know. He starts to wonder whether attending university and paying such expensive tuition is even worth it in this new world. In the future, the ability to use mana will likely be far more valuable than a piece of paper proving graduation. He concludes that university seems useless unless the professors actually teach him how to manage mana. Sensing his thoughts, Urtha tells Ilan that the easiest way to learn mana is by defeating monsters. But Ilan immediately protests, saying he doesn't want to do anything dangerous. Urtha reassures him, explaining that Earth is still in the early stages of the Great Cataclysm, so the monsters are weak. She urges him to hunt as many of them as possible while they're still manageable. Doing so will boost his experience points and help him level up, which is essential for training his mana. Ilan agrees with her logic, but points out that his mana is still at level 1, and he can't even use it like others. Urtha responds that while that's true, his physical capabilities are already so high that he can defeat monsters up to level 25 with ease. Ilan is stunned by the revelation. Seeing his reaction, Urtha smiles and says it's perfect. They can start right away. Suddenly, Ilan and the rest of the students rush to the windows of their classroom. Outside, they see a horde of giant ants approaching the university. Urtha tells Ilan that the tutorial is over and now mankind must survive on its own. All the students in the classroom begin to panic, shouting about where they should run and questioning what the government and military are doing. Amid the chaos, one student boldly steps forward toward the ants, inviting others to join his party and fight. The others turn to look at him, but he is instantly killed without defeating even a single ant. Panic spreads like wildfire, and the students start fleeing in all directions, leaving Ilan alone in the classroom. He comments, "I'm left alone again." Urtha responds, as expected of the one who always gets left behind. Ilan shouts in frustration, "It's not like I want to be left behind." He looks around, wondering if there's anything he can do. Spotting something on a nearby table, he picks it up. Urtha asks if he's planning to fight the ants, and he confirms it. Urtha explains that monsters are different from animals. Their skin is unnaturally tough, and their physical capabilities are far superior. However, she adds that the ant monsters don't seem to be above level 20, so they shouldn't be too difficult for him. Ilan breaks a table leg and swings it around. "It's fine. I can swing this well," he says. Watching his movements, Urtha notes that Ilan has a strong core and amazing balance muscles. With this alone, he should be able to defeat monsters below level 25. Ilan begins swinging more aggressively, surprising Urtha. He comments that the wooden spear is good enough to use. Urtha praises his improvisation, saying he managed to make a decent weapon in such a short time. Ilan shrugs and says, "Is it really? I was just bored, so I learned how to make a few things." Urtha then remembers when Leto was crying and pleading with God, saying, "Ilan is so small and cute. He doesn't know how to do anything. It's pitiful to leave him alone again." But seeing Ilan now, Urtha can't help but think, this is nothing like what Lita described. Ilan's physique is the peak result of extreme training. She wonders who exactly is small and pitiful here. Ilan looks at his makeshift spear and mutters, "It would have been nice if I brought the real spear from home." Urtha is quietly stunned. For someone she once saw as a lower being, Ilan has come incredibly far, and it shows on her face, though she keeps her thoughts to herself. Ilan then mentions that using stealth isn't helpful if he causes a public commotion in a plaza. People will notice him regardless. Still, he prefers to stay unnoticed. Urtha pauses for a moment and then says, "Just wear a mask. That should be enough to keep people from recognizing you." The scene shifts. Giant ant monsters are attacking. Suddenly, a person soars through the air toward the monsters. In an instant, he lands on top of one of the ants and defeats it with a single strike. As the ant falls, a status window appears in front of Ilan. It shows he has gained 800 experience points. He glances at the screen. He is now level 3. His stamina and mana stats have each increased by 2, while strength and agility have increased by 3. The status window also shows that his taijutsu has reached max level and can now be evolved if he has the right materials. He also obtained the record of a level 3 big mantis. Ilan feels a surge of joy at the sensation of leveling up. He recalls that the leveling system connects to the Akashic records, allowing organisms to obtain new strength. When a monster is killed, its records and future potential are absorbed. Ilan can even feel a small increase in his mana. Seeing this, Urtha asks why he's acting like that. Suddenly, another group of ants appears behind him. Ilan charges at them with his spear, excited. I've never had the chance to fight a whole group before. He throws the spear and defeats all the monsters in an instant. Without slowing down, he rushes toward the next wave of ants. Urtha instructs him to make full use of his body, and Ilan follows her advice, striking through another monster effortlessly. This time, he gains 700 more experience points. His speakmanship skill also reaches max level and becomes eligible for evolution if the right materials are available. In addition, he obtains the record of a level 11 big fly and gains 850 more experience points. With this, his strength, agility, stamina, and mana each increase by 1. He reaches level 4 and acquires the record of a level 4 big locust. Ilan smiles, thinking back to something Lita once said. Urtha tells him not to get too relaxed. More monsters are coming from above. Ilan rushes toward the monsters and leaps into the air, killing them and gaining more experience points along with a new record, level 7 big mosquito. One of the monsters attempts to attack Ilan from behind. It strikes him, but its fang breaks upon contact with his body. Seeing this, Urtha realizes that his body has been trained to the extreme. His skin is now so tough that the mosquito's proboscis couldn't pierce it. Ilan isn't alarmed, only surprised. He gets up and defeats the monster with ease. His body has already surpassed the limits of a normal human. He continues to defeat more monsters, steadily gaining experience points and new records. After that, he lands back on the ground, only to find another monster charging at him. Ilan dodges the attack, causing the monster to strike another one instead. Urtha warns him that more reinforcements are approaching, and Ilan suddenly finds himself surrounded. But rather than worrying about his life, he just finds the monsters disgusting and decides to wipe them all out. He charges in one direction, easily taking down every monster in his path and gaining more experience. His stamina, strength, and mana each increase by 1, while his agility increases by 2. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning crashes from the sky, taking out multiple monsters at once. Ilan is stunned. The attack came from a masked girl with bright blue hair. Ilan wonders if she's a mage, but Urtha tells him not to lose focus and to keep fighting. Ilan agrees and resumes his battle, taking on the monsters from one side while the girl handles the other. During the fight, Urtha comments on the girl's immense mana, wondering how she's able to continuously use lightning attacks. Ilan asks if she's also leveling up like him, revealing that every time he levels up, his stamina and mana are restored. Ilan then finishes off the last remaining monster and reaches level 7. His strength increases by 1, while stamina and mana increase by 2. The students and civilians watching from a distance are shocked by Ilan's performance. He completely annihilates the monsters and remarks calmly, "I barely managed to finish it." The military finally arrives, apologizing for their delay and explaining that their vehicle couldn't get over the hill. But they're stunned to see that all the monsters have already been defeated. They had expected a battlefield swarmed with hundreds of insect-type creatures. Meanwhile, Ilan begins butchering the monster remains, jokingly asking if there might be something like a jewel of 4 souls inside. Urtha is once again surprised to learn that Ilan has also mastered butchering. She informs him that taking the monster's remains can yield mana stones. Ilan is pleased to hear something new. Urtha tells him to extract the mana stone from the area where the exoskeleton is hardest. That's where mana has concentrated the most. A status window appears, notifying him that his butchering skill has reached its maximum level. The soldiers are amazed by his skill and whisper among themselves, wondering what level he might be and just how strong he really is. The blue-haired girl watches silently as Ilan extracts the mana stone. He holds it up and asks Urtha if it's the real thing. Urtha confirms it, telling him to store it carefully. Mana stones are the core material for all artifacts. Ilan looks away for just a moment. When he turns back, his heart skips a beat. A large crowd has gathered. Many people are holding up their phones, taking pictures of him. Camera flashes go off, and all eyes are on him. He doesn't know what to do. Fear creeps in. What if people find out who he is? What if they start following him? Eartha stands calmly beside him and tells him not to worry. No one will know who he is. But her words don't comfort him. This is the first time so many people have looked at him. He's not used to being seen. He feels shy and exposed. Then, the girl with bright blue hair walks toward him. People step aside to let her pass. She's confident, unshaken by the crowd. When she stops in front of Ilan, she looks him directly in the eyes, calm and serious. She asks for his help. She wants him to teach her how to take care of the monster remains. She saw what he did, and she knows he's strong. Ilan is stunned. This is the first time Ilan and the blue-haired girl meet. She is the Empress, though he doesn't know it yet.